I hadn't planned on staying long. Leah's parties were always too loud, too crowded, too much of everything. But the second I saw Liam's name on the guest list, I knew I'd show up. I told myself it was casual, friendly, no expectations. But that was a lie and I knew it. I was there for him. Liam wasn't just my friend. He was my first real crush, the kind that ruins you a little bit, the kind that makes every other guy feel like a placeholder. I met him freshman year when we both showed up late to Intro to Sociology and ended up sitting next to each other for the semester. From that point on, we just clicked. Like, genuinely clicked. We started hanging out, texting constantly, going to movies, grabbing late-night food runs. There were jokes and inside references and so many little moments that made my heart beat faster than I'd ever admit. But then this semester, something shifted. At first, it was subtle. He was just busy, I told myself. He missed a couple hangouts, didn't reply to texts right away, but then he stopped inviting me to things altogether. Our conversations turned to small talk, and at some point, I realized I was the only one reaching out. That's why, standing at the edge of the backyard with a drink in my hand and my fingers clenched around the cup, I watched Liam from across the yard like he was a stranger. He was surrounded by people, laughing, of course. Got his smile. Same black hoodie I always teased him about, hood up like he was still trying to be a little emo in his 20s. His hair was messier than usual, and I hated how badly I wanted to run my hands through it. I should have left, but I stayed. And for most of the night, he didn't even look my way. I was halfway through my second beer, standing by the porch light pretending to check my phone, when someone brushed past me. Not just passed, paused. I looked up and it was him, Liam. He didn't say anything, just glanced at me, eyes unreadable, then looked away again, started walking, then stopped. "Can we talk?" he said, without turning around. My heart skipped. I hesitated, not trusting what I was hearing. "What?" He turned just enough to look at me, his voice quieter. "Out back." He didn't wait for a yes, just walked toward the edge of the yard, past the string lights, toward the shadows behind the shed. I followed, pulse hammering in my ears. The noise from the party faded behind us, the smell of smoke and beer replaced by damp grass and autumn air. And then he stopped, turned around, looked right at me. That's when I knew this wasn't just some casual talk. It was something more. I followed him in silence. The party noise dimmed behind us, swallowed up by the shadows and the soft hum of crickets. The backyard wasn't anything special. Patches of overgrown grass, a few empty lawn chairs, and a cheap plastic fire pit flickering orange. But it felt like another world back here. Quieter, more exposed somehow. Liam stopped a few steps ahead and ran a hand through his hair, like he was trying to work something out before speaking. I stayed a couple feet back, unsure whether I should break the silence or let him do it. My chest was tight. Too many questions, not enough answers. Finally, he turned toward me. "I didn't think you'd come tonight," he said. I forced a small shrug. "Didn't plan to. Roommate convinced me." His eyes dropped to the ground, then back up. "I've been shitty lately," I blinked. That wasn't what I expected. "Yeah," I said, before I could stop myself. "You kind of have." Liam let out a slow breath and sat on the edge of an old patio bench, elbows on his knees, staring at the ground like it had something important to say. I stayed standing. There was a weird tension in the air. Not angry, not even awkward. Just loaded. "I know," he said, voice low. "I've been avoiding you." Hearing him say it made it real. I didn't realize how much I needed that confirmation until right then. But it didn't make it easier. "Why?" I asked. "Did I do something?" His head snapped up. "No. No, man, not at all. That's the thing. It's not you." I crossed my arms, trying to hold something together. "Then, what is it?" There was a long pause. Liam looked like he was wrestling with something. I waited, because I knew whatever it wasn't easy for him. And even though part of me was pissed, Another part still cared. Too much, probably. Finally, he said, I started feeling weird around you. My stomach dropped. He must have seen my face, because he rushed to add, not in a bad way, just different. Different how? He stood up then, walked a few steps away, then turned back like he couldn't decide whether to leave or stay. I don't know how to say this without it sounding dumb. Try me. He looked at me, really looked, and something in his expression changed. Drop the wall. I like you. The world tilted. I stared at him, not sure I'd heard him right. You, what? I like you, he repeated, this time with less hesitation. More than I should. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. You've been avoiding me because of that? Liam ran a hand down his face. Yeah. Because I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't plan it, I swear. It just happened. And I figured if I stayed away, it would go away. I laughed once. Quiet, dry. Yeah? How's that working out? He cracked a smile, the kind I hadn't seen in weeks. Terribly. There was a beat of silence between us, heavy and uncertain. Then I said, You know I like you too, right? His eyes met mine, and something in them shifted, like relief and disbelief at the same time. I hoped, he said, voice soft. And I didn't know. I took a step closer. Then another. Until we were inches apart, just barely touching in the dark. I could see the nervous twitch in his jaw, the way his fingers fidgeted at his sides. He was scared, vulnerable, and so was I. But you do now, I said. He nodded slowly. Yeah, I do. The silence after that wasn't uncomfortable. It was full of possibility, but neither of us moved. Because whatever was going to happen next, it wasn't just about want. It was about deciding if we were really going to cross that line. And what would happen if we did? I stood there in the dark, face to face with the guy I'd crushed on for years, and everything in me was screaming to close the distance. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. I was waiting for him to make a move, or maybe he was waiting on me. Either way, neither of us did anything. For a few seconds, we just stood, letting the moment stretch. Then Liam exhaled, like he couldn't hold it in any longer, and said, Can I show you something? I nodded, unsure what that meant. Yeah. He took a step back and gestured toward the shed behind him. It was one of those half-collapsing backyard structures that every college house seemed to have. Paint peeling, door hanging slightly off one hinge, forgotten tools and rusted bikes shoved inside. I come out here sometimes, he said, walking over and gently pushing the door open. When the house is too much. I followed him inside. It smelled like old wood and grass clippings, but not in a bad way. There was a camping lantern on an overturned bucket, which he switched on. It cast a soft yellow glow across the space. Dust floated in the air. The walls were lined with hooks and shelves of random crap, paint cans, a deflated basketball, an unopened box of Christmas lights. He sat on an old beanbag shoved into the corner and patted the floor next to him. I sat. So, I said, voice barely above a whisper. This is where you hide? He chuckled. Basically. It's where I think. I looked at him. And what have you been thinking about? His smile faded. He stared down at his hands for a moment, fingers loosely interlocked. You, he said. The word hung in the space between us, heavier than it should have been. I kept thinking if I just gave it space, it'd go away. The feelings, the thoughts, the way I'd start wondering what it would be like to just kiss you. I felt a jolt in my chest, but it didn't go away, he went on. It got worse. Every time you texted, every time I saw you across the quad, or laughed at some dumb meme you sent me, I wanted more, and that scared the hell out of me. Why? I asked quietly. He looked up, His eyes were sharp and soft all at once. "Because you're my best friend, and if I told you, and it messed things up, I couldn't handle losing you." The words landed like a punch to the ribs. I understood that fear all too well. "Liam," I said, my voice tighter than I wanted, "you didn't almost lose me because of how you feel. You almost lost me because you pulled away." His face dropped, like he hadn't thought of it that way. "I know, I'm sorry." I nodded slowly. "I don't want to go back to how things were." "Neither do I." And then, like something cracked open between us, Liam shifted closer. His thigh brushed against mine. The contact sent a charge up my spine. I didn't move. Neither did he. "I've never done this before," he said, his voice barely audible. "Me neither." We sat in that breathless space, the air between us thick with tension. And then, without warning, he leaned in. It was slow, like he was giving me time to back away. But I didn't. Our lips met in a soft, uncertain kiss. Hesitant at first, like we were testing something. His mouth was warm and familiar in a way that didn't make sense. When he pulled back, just an inch, his forehead rested against mine. "Holy shit," he whispered. I smiled. "Yeah." Another pause. Another breath. And then he kissed me again, this time with more certainty. That was the moment we crossed the line, and we both knew nothing was going to be the same again. We didn't talk much after that second kiss. We didn't need to. We just sat there in the dusty old shed, in this weird mix of quiet electricity and disbelief, like we'd both slipped into some alternate version of our lives. I was aware of everything. How warm the side of his leg felt against mine, how his hand was still lightly brushing my knee, how the faint hum of music from the party drifted in like a reminder that the rest of the world still existed. But for once, I didn't care about any of that. It was just him and me. Eventually, Liam leaned back against the wooden wall, tilting his head up toward the cobwebbed rafters. "I've thought about doing that for months," he said. I turned toward him. "What stopped you?" He let out a breath that sounded somewhere between a laugh and a sigh. "Honestly, fear. I thought you'd freak. Or worse, not feel the same." I shook my head. "I was convinced you didn't want anything to do with me anymore." His eyes met mine, and something like regret flickered there. God, that's the last thing I wanted. But I figured if I kept my distance, maybe it would pass. Maybe I'd go back to just being your friend. I smiled gently. "And did that work?" He smiled back. "No, not even a little." We sat in silence for a bit longer, the kind that felt heavy but not uncomfortable. I could feel the questions stacking up in my brain. What does this mean? Are we something now? Is he really sure about this? What happens when the sun comes up and everything's real again? But I didn't ask any of them. Not yet. Instead, I reached down and gently laced my fingers with his. It was simple, but it was enough. He looked down at our hands, then back at me, and something about the way he smiled made my stomach do this stupid somersault. "You ever think about how weird this is?" he asked. I snorted. "You mean being in a shed at 1 a.m. confessing feelings we've both been suppressing for months?" "Yeah. That." I leaned my head back, letting it bump against the wooden wall. "Honestly, I think it's perfect." He was quiet for a second. Then, softly, "Me too." That's when I noticed the chill creeping in. It had gotten colder while we sat out there, and the shed wasn't insulated at all. Liam must have felt it too, because he rubbed his hands together and shifted closer to me, his knee now pressing against mine like it belonged there. "You cold?" I asked. "A little." "You?" I nodded. "A little." Without a word, he pulled the flannel off his back. He'd been wearing it open over a t-shirt and draped it over my shoulders. His hands lingered for a second before settling on my arms. The touch was gentle, familiar, but different now. And then, quietly, he asked, "Would it be weird if I said I kind of want to just stay out here a little longer?" No, I said. Not weird. Good, he whispered. Because this is the first time in weeks I've felt like myself. My throat tightened. Same. We didn't say much after that. Just sat there, close and quiet, the flannel warm around me, and his arm pressed lightly against mine. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, or what the hell we were even calling this thing between us. But in that moment, in that messy, creaky shed full of old tools and tangled Christmas lights, it felt like we were finally starting something real. And for now, that was enough. We didn't stay out there all night. Eventually, the cold became too much, and Liam nudged me, murmuring, "Come on, let's head in." I didn't want to move. I was scared that if we stood up and walked back into the house, the moment would collapse under the weight of reality. But he looked at me with this softness, this steady kind of care, and I realized he wasn't running anymore. Neither of us were. We crept back inside the house through the sliding glass door. Most of the party had died down, just a few voices left murmuring upstairs. Empty cups littered the kitchen counter. The house smelled like beer and pizza and late-night regrets. Liam grabbed a blanket off the couch, gave me this look, and said, "My room?" I followed him without a word. It wasn't the first time I'd been in Liam's room, but it was the first time it felt like stepping into something different, something more. He shut the door quietly behind us, clicked off the overhead light, and turned on a small desk lamp instead. The glow was soft, warm, kind of like him. Neither of us said much as we kicked off our shoes. He handed me some old gym shorts and a t-shirt. They're clean, I swear. And we changed in opposite corners of the room like we were still figuring out the boundaries. When we finally crawled into his bed, there was this half second of tension. Do we cuddle? Do we stay on our own sides? What now? Liam broke the silence first. "Is this okay?" he asked, lifting his arm, offering the space against his chest. "Yeah," I said, maybe a little too fast. I curled in beside him. His body was warm, his heartbeat steady against my ear. We didn't kiss again. We didn't do anything dramatic. We just laid there, breathing, existing in the same small space after everything had shifted. He fell asleep before I did. I stayed awake for a while, listening to the sound of his breath, letting it soothe the last bits of anxiety I'd been holding on to. And somewhere between 3 and 4 a.m., I finally let myself believe this might not be some temporary thing. That maybe, just maybe, he was serious. When I woke up, sunlight was streaming through the blinds. My head was foggy, but not in a bad way. I turned over and saw Liam still asleep, one hand flopped across the pillow, hair sticking up in all directions. For a second, I just watched him. Then, as if he could feel it, his eyes fluttered open. "Morning," he said, voice rough from sleep. "Hey." He blinked a few times, then looked down at me, almost shy. "Last night wasn't a dream, right?" "Nope." A slow smile spread across his face. "Good." I stretched, groaning a little. "I probably look like hell." He shook his head. "You look like you." It should have been cheesy, but the way he said it made my stomach twist in the best way. We laid there for a while, trading sleepy looks and soft smiles, until the sound of someone banging around in the kitchen reminded us that we were still in a house full of people. "You think anyone knows?" I asked. Liam shrugged, smirking. "Maybe, but do we care?" I thought about that for a second. "No," I said, "I really don't." He leaned over and kissed my forehead. Not a joke, not a tease, just him being real. And I realized then, I wasn't scared anymore. We didn't exactly walk into the kitchen holding hands, but we didn't act like nothing had happened either. It was late morning by the time we came downstairs. Leah's house was in classic morning after disarray, plastic cups in the sink, snack bowls half full of stale chips, someone's shoe in the planter for some reason. A few people were slumped on the couch, nursing coffee or scrolling their phones like zombies. I was bracing for the awkward moment, the teasing, the sideways looks. But nobody batted an eye. Liam poured us both coffee, handed me a mug, and didn't let go of my hand until he had to. That simple gesture hit me harder than any kiss the night before. "I kind of expected more drama," I whispered. He grinned. "Give it time." We sat out on the front porch steps with our coffee, letting the sun warm our faces. The air was cool and damp in that post-rain way, and the street was quiet except for the occasional car or distant laugh from inside the house. It felt normal, and that's what made it surreal. Liam nudged me with his shoulder. "So, you think we just had our How I Met Your Boyfriend moment?" I laughed. "Kind of hope so." He turned toward me, serious for a second. "You okay with people knowing?" I looked at him, really looked, and saw the way he was trying to be casual, while also clearly bracing for whatever answer I gave. I didn't need time to think. "Yeah," I said. "I'm okay with it." His shoulders relaxed, like I'd just taken a weight off him I didn't even know he was carrying. "Good," he said. "Because I don't think I could go back to pretending." I nodded. "Same." We sat like that for a while, coffee mugs in hand, knees touching, this quiet, easy warmth settling between us. I didn't know what we were going to be tomorrow, or next week, or what would happen when the real world crept back in with school and work and all the usual distractions. But I knew this. We'd turned a corner, and neither of us was pretending anymore. Eventually, my phone buzzed. A text from my roommate. "You alive?" Liam glanced over. "That your guy?" "Yeah, probably wondering if I got drunk and passed out in a ditch." "Want me to walk you back?" I hesitated. "I mean, you don't have to." "I want to." So we walked. It wasn't far. 10 minutes maybe. But we took our time, talking about nothing, joking like we used to before all the tension. But now there was something else layered underneath it all, something softer, more honest. When we reached my front step, I stopped. "Well," I said, suddenly unsure again. "This is..." "Yeah." I looked at him, trying to read his face, and then he kissed me. Not intense, not rushed, just a quiet, steady kiss that said, "This is real." When he pulled back, he rested his forehead against mine. "I'll text you when I get home," he murmured. "You better." Then he grinned and backed away, hands in his hoodie pockets, walking off like it was just another normal Sunday morning. Except it wasn't. It was the start of something. Something we hadn't planned but couldn't ignore anymore, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I spent most of Sunday floating in this weird state between calm and giddy. It wasn't just that Liam had kissed me, or that we'd finally stopped circling around whatever had been building between us for months. It was how natural it felt afterward. No awkward texts, no ghosting, no waking up to the panic that maybe it was all a mistake. He did text me when he got home, just one word, home. I replied with a dumb little smiley face, and somehow that felt like enough. The following week, everything shifted, quietly but undeniably. He sat next to me in our shared lecture again, like he used to, but this time he let his knee rest against mine the whole time. He waited for me after class, holding a coffee he picked up for me without asking how I took it, because he already knew. And when we walked across campus together, he'd slide his hand into mine like it was the most casual thing in the world. No dramatic declarations, no big coming out announcements, just us, quietly folding into each other's lives. But of course, nothing stays hidden forever. It was Friday night, and we were at our usual spot with a few mutual friends. Low-key hangout, someone's living room, pizza boxes stacked on the coffee table, beer bottles scattered between game controllers. We were sitting close but not overly coupley. Still, I caught the way one of our friends, Marcus, kept glancing between us. Finally, he raised an eyebrow. "Okay, I gotta ask. Are you guys like a thing now?" Liam looked at me, and I looked back. "No panic, no fear." I nodded. "Yeah, we are." There was a second of silence. Then Marcus grinned and went, "About damn time." The room laughed. Someone else clapped. Someone else just said, "Knew it." And that was it. No drama, no one flipped out. I think part of me had been bracing for something bigger, something worse. But the reality was, our friends already knew us, and they'd seen what we'd been too scared to admit until now. Later that night, Liam and I ended up back at his place. It wasn't planned, not really, but it felt natural. We curled up on his bed, TV playing some movie neither of us were watching. At one point, I rolled over, resting my head on his chest. "I still can't believe this is real," I said. He kissed the top of my head. "Me neither." "Why now?" I asked. "Why did you finally pull me aside?" He was quiet for a second. Then he said, "Because you started looking at me like I was already gone. And I couldn't take it anymore." I swallowed hard, not expecting that. "I never wanted to lose you," he added. But I realized I already was. So I figured, screw it. I'd rather risk everything than keep pretending I didn't feel the way I did. I lifted my head to look at him. "You didn't just risk something," I said. "You gave me something." He smiled. "What's that?" "You." We didn't say anything else after that. We just held each other. And even though we had no idea what would come next, one thing was clear. There was no going back, and neither of us wanted to.